Hello, everybody. Oh, I forgot to put my tooth in.
I was just gonna say. You want
Uh,
to go do that, and I'll do the
yeah.
introduction.
You
Okay.
introduce while I come back.
Okay. Yeah, Vet just had some dental work done, so she's gonna go do that, and I will welcome you. Hello, welcome to Tuesdays in the Shop. I am Andrea. Vet will be right back in a second. Thank you for joining us. I see we have a couple people commenting. We have Robin from Massachusetts and Dana from Virginia. Thanks for joining us tonight, guys. And Vet is going to be showing you EPP, which, if you don't know what EPP is, it stands for English Paper Piecing, which is not the same as foundation paper piecing. So those are two different things. You might be familiar with one, but they're actually very different. So tonight we're talking about English paper piecing, which is done almost entirely by hand.
Yes.
There might be a way to do it by machine, but I don't know if anyone actually does it that way.
There's definitely someone on the internet that figured out how to join them on machine, but it seems like so much more work to me that I don't know why you would want to do that. Thanks for everyone who's checking in the comments, telling us where you're watching from. It's really cool to see people from all over the place. We've got Maryland, Virginia, Massachusetts,
Manhattan.
Yeah, exactly. Like Andrea said, we're talking about this new bundle that just came in from
Oh, I didn't mention that part, actually.
Oh,
I just mentioned the EPP part.
Yeah, so we got this bundle in. I'll show you what it looks like. It just came in brand new. It is just so pretty. So it's 12 pack orders from Anna Maria Horner that all coordinate, and they're from all throughout the different collections of hers. It's not like just one group. So they went in and they pulled 12 prints that all work really well together in that like real Anna Maria print upon print kind of vibe, right? And Andrea and I were looking at this and trying to decide what are we going to make. And so many of the prints in here have flowers, which is a really common thing that Anna Maria does. And because they had flowers, I was like, oh, I want to make some grandmother's flower garden flowers, which are the EPP Hexies flowers. And then we thought, okay, let's make a video where we show the way I make EPP Hexies, and we can just chat about the basics of EPP. For those of you who've never tried it before, you can ask questions in the chat, and I can try showing, whatever part you are curious about. But before we do that, let's just look at the fabrics, okay? So on the screen right now is the bundle, the pretty picture that the manufacturer, Free Spirit, gives us to promote the bundle. But on my table, let me switch to my other camera. No, that's not what I meant to do.
That is a nice one, though.
This print? I know.
Yeah, that's an old one, I think.
Is it? Let's see.
I think. I mean, she definitely reuses some of her motifs.
Right. She definitely does. Yeah. I'm pulling this tooth out because it actually is very uncomfortable.
I do recognize the green flower in this one from a pillow that I made 20 years ago, maybe. With a totally different print, but it did have that flower in it, and I embroidered on top of the flower, which is why I remember some of the detail.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Can
funny.
You still hear me if I have my camera off? Okay, I turned my camera off so nobody has to see the gap in my tooth because I'm having dental work done.
But we can still see your fabric, and that's the important
part. Yes, this is the important part. All right, so this is the first print. It's very vibrant, and you can see it's from the Love Always collection from Anna Maria. And I really like how she has the two different greens and the bright pop of like lavendery pink. She has a tendency to put colors together you wouldn't necessarily think would go together. And then when you see it, you're like, oh yeah, that's pretty cool.
She makes it work.
This one has a very Moroccan vibe to it, and we didn't get the selvage side of it, so I don't know what group this is from. Look at how different this one is too, right? So you might be thinking like, how do these go together? They go together partly because some of these colors are repeated, like this pale pink is the same as that pale pink, but they also go together because of the shapes, right? So here's like a little flower, here's a bigger flower. And some of them go together better than others, but that's part of the fun. This one does not tell you what collection it's from, but apparently it was called Nashville.
Oh, that was from the one that we had, because it was all based on cities. I think it's the same collection as the next one you're going to show.
This one?
Maybe?
And I don't know. This one I think was supposed to look like needlepoint. And this really
right. We had that in a different colorway.
Yeah. It doesn't say on the color sheet. This one is such an all over, like nearly solid, super usable.
And that uses that flower again.
Yes, and it's from Love Always again. And it has this motif that is repeated. This one you can see I already cut into a lot. This is also a nice like blender, smaller scale. Anna Maria has a tendency to have a lot of fabrics with very large scales. And when you're doing EPP with a tiny hexagon, you sometimes want to cut up the one with the smaller print so that you can have more of that and have more of the same repeat instead of having a very small amount of one of the prints. I love this one, but when I looked at it, I couldn't really make a decision about how I wanted to cut it. So I left this one for later to tackle later.
There's so many cool things you could cut
right?
out.
You could like pick different parts of it, or maybe even
spiky flower or the leaves.
Hi, Nana. Thanks for joining us. And then this like monochromatic. Oh, I guess it's upside down because the hearts go the other way.
I think that's from that same collection.
Yeah, I can't. Can you tell that this is a very beautiful drawing? I love that. And then this is her really famous echinacea print. She's redone this print in tons of colors.
Yeah. Also
very satisfying to fussy cut depending on which size thing you're using.
Oh, yeah.
This, I think, is another really pretty daisy looking flower. So you can see there's a lot of flowers in this group, which is where I got the idea from. Oh, and echinacea got upside down. It's funny how when it's upside down, it looks so different.
It does.
Versus right side up. And then I think this is my favorite print. This gives me like William Morris vibes / I don't know. I just think it's so pretty. And I was planning to decapitate some of these birds by fussy cutting because look how perfect that fits in there. Yeah. But then I felt bad because I wanted to show it to everybody before I chopped it up. So I didn't actually cut this one yet. So I'll show you some of the blocks that I already, not blocks, Hexies. So if you don't know what we're talking about, English paper piecing paper pieces look like this. This is a 1-inch hexagon. Here is a 1.5-inch hexagon. And if you're wondering how you measure them, the measurements are the straight side on the edge. So there's 1 inch here and there's 1.5 inches here. You don't measure this way. Why? Because these are the pieces that go together. So you need to know that your triangle and your hexagon are going to fit. You need the end that's going to be sewn to the other piece to be the same length. So a 1-inch hexagon would fit a 1-inch square and a 1-inch triangle, but would not fit a 1.5-inch whatever because there's a bunch of pieces, 1/2 inch left that you can't stitch up, right? Here's, they don't only come in hexagons, although hexagons are the most popular shape. Here's a pentagon, and you'll see that this pentagon is not white, it is like a manila color. There's no rhyme or reason that I can find to when the company that makes most of this stuff is called Paper Pieces, and you've probably heard of them. This is their brand. They are everywhere, and they really kind of invented half of this world by providing the materials for us to make these projects. Pretty much every designer on the market, when they're designing a new English paper piecing design, they approach Paper Pieces to manufacture the pieces. So if you've ever made like a Tulip Pink Hex on the Beach quilt, for example, it comes from Paper Pieces, the kit. Or she's got this new one with the tumbling blocks. Again, you go to Paper Pieces to buy the kit. So this is the papers. Oh, and by the way, if anyone has any questions while I go, just type them in the chat. I can see the chat from where I'm right here. My computer's just right there. So what I was doing last night is I was going through the fabrics and being like, oh, this seems like pretty. And remember the one that I had really cut up? So this one, I made 6 hexagons out of. And I actually did fussy cut this, even though this print is regular enough that it maybe doesn't matter so much. I actually did fussy cut them so that the same part of the repeat is on each one. So you could see that this bigger
square
rectangle, yes, the bigger one is here and the smaller one is there.
I could
And
tell that you
actually,
fussy cut them.
this upside down. This is actually this way. So, and the reason I did that is because I really love when you're doing hexagons to play with the secondary designs. So
Mhm.
because I have like a big one and a little one, and so you can make them be face the same way basically. So here's, no, that's not right. How does it go? That way? Yes, I think it's that way. So when you're laying it out, you can play with which direction is pointing in and which direction is pointing out. You can see this one's wrong. Oh, these two are wrong. Yeah, I confused myself, I think. Okay, let's try
That
rotating them.
pattern is tricky. Because it doesn't have an obvious right,
Right.
up, down, right, left.
It's like not that bright of a difference.
Yeah, show them that other hexagon with the out of the blue fabric.
Okay, there you go. Now they're all in a row.
Yeah.
You see, like this is the same print, the same direction. So these vertical pink lines are all pointing outwards. It's kind of amazing to me that this looks so green on my screen. Hi, Alicia. Thanks for joining us. Oh, Hank, you're saying you only fuss cut with solids. That's interesting. Are you being facetious? Because
Yes.
how would you do that? So I was going to say, I'm going to bring this closer because I feel like the color is being weirded out by the camera. I wonder if I change, because it's so pretty. I kind of want it to look better. My fancy light with all the different warm and cool. I mean, I think that's still the best one. What do you think?
We don't know what it looks like in person.
That's a fair point.
So we can't tell you which one is best.
Actually, I think it's this one that's the best.
Although I suppose I do have the fabric here. I could go get it.
I think that's the closest to reality. Well, at least on my screen.
Let's go with yes.
Yeah. So I made 6 of the same because when you're doing grandmother's flower garden, you do make rosettes that are 6 of the same fabric on the outside and 1 different on the middle. And then you might do a border of a contrast, or you might do flowers next to each other. If you don't know what I mean by flowers, I will pull out some random other flowers that I have. I, as everyone knows, do not finish projects. I only start projects. So I have lots of other flowers from other projects made. So this is what a flower looks like once it's sewn together. And you can either stitch them to each other like that, or you could like have some border between them in order to differentiate them, and then put the next one next to it and put more border, right? It's up to you. But what I really wanted to play with was coordinates. In general, at least I do not love doing print. Like my eye doesn't know where to rest, and I almost feel kind of dizzy sometimes. And I realize that that's like Anna Maria's thing. She does lots of print on top of print on top of print. Ha! Kathy just said she loves that I'm a starter because she's a starter too. This is the best part. Shopping for fabric and starting. Best part. So what I was doing is I was going through our stash of coordinates, and I pulled out some fabrics that I thought might work with these prints. I'm just going to make a pile over here so you can see.
I like blue with the echinacea.
This blue?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
This is actually the Kona color of the year, which we did a video for, I think, a long time ago, but it finally came in. And if you're wondering, like, it's basically aqua, right? The color name is julep.
But it's a green aqua, right, as opposed to a blue
aqua that leans towards green. Yeah, exactly. So if you're wondering what this color looks like, you now have no idea still, because you can't tell because it's a screen. But if you own one of these, what's the name of this? Machinger's gloves, you can see the color difference. It's like kind of the same green, but not quite as dark.
But cleaner.
But this matched perfectly with so many of these fabrics that I was like, oh, I have to use this, right? So I pulled that, and I pulled a couple Tulip Pink blenders. And then, so here's my flower, and I want to see what center do I want. So I made one each. I apparently lost the pink one. And you can see if I put this in the middle here, this is the vibe. This is the look I get, right? It's a little bit dark, I think, like maybe there's not enough contrast between this background color and this print. So let's try something lighter. Look at this. I like that. You can actually see the flower better on this, the shape of the flower and the center contrast. Let's try the solid. Sometimes the solid is a nice break from having so much print.
Mm-hmm.
I think any of these really could work, but I think my personal favorite is the pink one. What do you think, Andrew?
Yeah.
I think that just looks so cute. And theoretically, you could make like a lot more solids and make that around, or I mean, you don't even have to make this shape, right? But I love the idea of flower fabrics sewn into granny flowers. It's like flower on flower on flower. So what I wanted to do in this video is show you real quick how I go about basting with glue. There's, this is the glue stick that I like to use. This one is made for us EPP people. You can just use like a regular glue stick like this. This happens to be a very large one. So it can be a little hard to just put a tiny dab of glue in. You want to put as little glue as possible to keep your fabric stuck to the paper. Why is that? Because when the glue dries up, and the last step when you go to quilt this, you have to pull all these papers out. You don't want it to be so stuck on there that you tear the paper or, God forbid, tear your fabric, right? So you're aiming to put just a little dab of glue. So I'm going to show you. Let's do a solid one just so I think it might be easier to see. You do not have to be precise when you cut out your fabric. Oh, Hank is saying that the straight lines in matching around the center is fun looking. That's cool. Yeah, I think it looks really cool too.
She said practice.
Sorry?
You've had practice.
Oh, that's true. Yes, I do this a lot. Look. Yeah, you want to see, like, I have an absurd amount of, like, just like sitting around all these other hexagons. Because my favorite part is the basting. I don't really enjoy the piecing it together part. So I just make a huge pile of hexagons and then like.
Yeah, we need to find somebody to sew them together because I like the fussy cutting.
Yes.
But that's all.
Hey, template. Live, I was saying to Andrea that I can't find my 1-inch hexagon template and that I have a tendency to stick them inside the project that I'm doing. So this is some other pink hexagon thing. I just put a bunch of pinks together. I think
that's where all your light pinks are too.
Oh yeah, apparently. I think I did this because I had to go on a plane and I didn't have anything portable, and so I started another grandmother's flower garden thing. But yay, I found my template. We will talk about this in a second. So when you are not fussy cutting, it doesn't really matter how big your fabric piece is, other than it needs to be bigger than your template, than your paper rather. The seam allowance can be as small as 1/4 of an inch, but I tend to go for 3/8 of an inch because it's a little easier to finagle, especially when you're using glue. It gives you a nice amount of overlap so that the fabric will stick to your paper nicer. If you have like a very small amount of fabric, you could definitely do 1/4 inch, it'll hold. But I generally do 3/8. So what I usually do is I line up one straight edge along a cut edge, because that's one less edge I have to cut. And these are my favorite scissors. You do not need to use such fancy scissors to cut something like this, but these are the Karen K. Buckley Perfect Scissors that you've seen me promote before, because I'm just obsessed with them. They are so comfortable. This grippy bit is so nice to hold, and it's bigger. The finger holes are bigger than most scissors. My hands cramp up really easily, and I find that these scissors I can hold longer and I can be more accurate with. So I'm just going to line up. I'm just eyeballing about a 3/8 inch seam allowance, and then I'm going to cut along the next line, along the next line. And you know the rule about you turn the thing you're cutting instead of turning the scissors, right? So I'm just rotating so that it can reach the other side. Oh, I'm too close to the edge of the camera, sorry. And why I said it doesn't really matter how big this is because as long as it's bigger enough that you have a seam allowance that you can then sew together and your quilt won't fall apart. That's really all that matters, unless you're doing fussy cutting, in which case it really does matter what the outside edge looks like. Once you have your piece cut out, and you could absolutely cut like a stack of these, like with a rotary cutter if you wanted. Pretend you needed like 50 white hexagons. You can absolutely cut one and then use a rotary cutter ruler. You don't want to cut with a rotary cutter without a ruler, but you would just put this on top of like lots of layers of the fabric, and you would cut with a rotary cutter along the edge, so you don't have to cut with scissors unless you need to. Once you have your piece, you're going to take your glue, and you can see that the point of this is smaller. They actually make them even smaller. I find this is small enough. Also, there's this lady online that's making these things that fit on top of a normal glue stick and then make the end smaller. And this is cool because it's even smaller. However, my carelessness already ruined one of these by having to, you end up with a lot of glue inside of it, and it got stuck and I couldn't get it out, and I just had to throw it out, which is annoying. So I went back to using this thing because this thing is easier, since it's actually made for this purpose. First thing you're going to do is you're going to put a dot of glue right in the middle, and literally just a dot, not a lot. And then you're going to stick your paper, roughly in the middle. And what I like to do is I put one dot on the corner, one dot in the middle, one dot on the other corner. And then you press over and just kind of hold your fingers on it for a second so that it's actually attached. And then you go to the next end, and I'm going to put one on the end. And since this is already folded over, probably don't have to worry too much about having a middle piece, a middle dot, but I'm going to put a middle dot right there. Oh, what Barbara's asking, what is the glue brand? These is from Sewline, which is that brand that makes all those cool accessories. Like our trio pen, we really like from them too. So you do want an overlap here. It makes like a really satisfying like mitered corner, which is really pretty. I don't know if you can see it. Yeah, you can see that. I'm going to the next one. Little dot of glue. And you can see that I'm putting the glue on the outside edge, not the inside edge, right?
Is there a reason you do that?
Because ideally, when you go to stitch it, you don't want to be stitching through glue because it's harder to sew through glue than to sew through just fabric. So if your glue was on the very edge, it would make your life a little harder when you're stitching. The other thing about this step is resist the urge to do like a desk grip. Like you are not pushing this as hard as you can so that if there's tension on the paper because you pushed so hard, you did it too tight. It's just supposed to be a nice, comfortable fold. Because if you push it, if you make it that tight, when you take the paper out, the piece is going to shrink and you're going to end up with puckers. So just fold it over in a reasonable tension, and don't worry about it being too perfect. Oh, look, I didn't glue enough right there. I'm just going to add a little glue right there so it comes down. And here's my last piece. The last one is always a little smaller because you're already got both corners down. And once that's all done, look, you got your piece. This glue is blue but dries clear. It's the same as the glue sticks that are purple and dry clear. So like right now you can still see like a dot in there. It goes away when it dries. So now I have two of this color. I just found this thing. This is a template for cutting a 3/8 seam allowance for a 1-inch hexagon. So the inner line here is the same size as the paper piece, right? And why do you use this? You use this when you're doing fussy cutting. So here is the one that Andrew was just referring to. One of these fabrics, I thought to myself, ooh, this could be a cool fussy cut, right? Let me go find that fabric in my stock. It is this one. So a lot of times, if I want a fussy cut, which is not required, you could do a whole grandmother's flower garden or any other kind of EPP project with no fussy cutting whatsoever. You could let the lines land where they land and be happy, and it'll still be a really nice quilt. But if you want to go up a notch, you fussy cut. And the best spots to fussy cut are drastic changes in the print. So like, I mean, this would work too, right? This stripe, like you could fussy cut.
You could have
that
a stripe going
into
around
the middle,
your flower,
right? Where
or
like the
stripes
second
radiating out from the flower.
Yep. But the reason you want this is because this is different than this, which is different than this. if you try to fussy cut on a print that was very flat, as in not a lot of contrast like this, whoops, where's my template? It wouldn't do much because there just isn't enough going on. Like you could do this, you could fussy cut one of these rosettes into the middle. And I have a tip for you if you're doing this. Let me find my friction pen.
Yeah, to draw
Exactly.
the motif on the template.
I never find what I'm looking for, of course.
That's always the way it is.
So this is not a friction, this is a Sharpie, but who cares? So pretend you wanted to do this flower over and over again. You can draw right onto this template. This part is rough, so I'm gonna draw on this part and just kind of trace the thing you're trying to align. And then every time you go to cut, you are going to use those guidelines, which, can you see that? It's probably hard to see because it's green.
Yeah.
But you're going to use those guidelines to cut each of your cuts. And when you're fussy cutting, the easiest way to do this is to trace. So I'm going to line up my template, and then I'm going to draw where I'm going to cut. What's nice about doing this way is that then you can mark, I don't know, 16 of these if you need 16 of them, and then cut them all at once. You don't have to mark, cut, mark, cut. And it also helps you figure out if you have enough fabric, because a lot of times you're trying to do this and you need 16 of them. When you mark one, then you'll see how much fabric you actually need. And then you can go, okay, well, here's another one of these. Here's another one of these. Oh, I only have 7 or whatever. So like, okay, this is a bad idea. Let's erase this and go design it in a different way. So let's go back to this one. When I saw this print, and I was watching a TV show about, there's this new show on Netflix called The Diplomat, which is about government stuff and like security and stuff. And one of the scenes was in the Middle East somewhere. And I was looking at this and I was like, oh, that makes me think of that thing. And then I got even more excited to fussy cut this. So this one, I fussy cut just like by eye. And if you're going to do it by eye, because either you can't find your template or you don't own one, what the tip I have for you is to, instead of looking at the thing you're trying to focus on, in this case, we want this tip to be in the middle of here, right? Instead of doing that, you line up underneath it and push up and try to find a spot on either side that aligns to something. So in this case, I messed with this for a long time, and I saw that this line here, oh, it's not on the screen, I'm sorry, that this line here and this line here are at the right distance to line up so that this point was in the right spot. So that's how I cut this one.
Clever.
Because I couldn't find my template yesterday, but today I found my template. So now I'm going to erase the mark I drew earlier, which this is why you're not supposed to do it in the Sharpie, because I don't think it's actually going to come out.
Rubbing alcohol or hand sanitizer will take that off, though.
Yeah, I'm going to try.
If your hands aren't sweaty enough to wipe it off.
And I'll look for a darker color so that it can actually see. And it's the Sharpie again, because I can't find my what's that pen called?
Micron.
Micron, yeah. All right, so because I now have my template, thank you, messiness, I can do the same kind of thing that I was just doing, where I was like sticking this on a certain spot and making sure the sides look the same, but I'm going to do it with my template. So basically, you see how this corner, oh, maybe you can't see this, hold on. Is that any better?
Yeah.
So this corner here and this corner here are the corners that I'm aligning. So you just line up to the part of the repeat that you found that works for the thing you're trying to do. And in this case, I would mark this, and I would also mark kind of like this and like this to make it really easy to then plop it down further and keep cutting, right? In the case of this print, I have it on both sides, but I'm not going to be able to use every one of these because, watch, if I line this up, this is eating into this one. I can't use this point. I can only use this one. Okay, so I'm going to line this up and hold it down and then just trace around with chalk pencil. And this pencil doesn't have great contrast for this print, unfortunately, so I'm just trying to draw it so you can see. It looks better on the blue than on the printed part. And people get real upset about wasting fabric when they're doing fussy cutting, but they're kind of can't get away with it. Like, there's no way you can use this piece. There's just like, it's not going to do anything, or like this piece probably, right? All right, so now I'm going to see if I can fit. Let's see if I can use this one.
Yeah, I bet you can. This one is actually not as bad as some. A lot of times it just ends up oh, nope, not quite.
You see? So I lined this up to use this part, and it overlaps here. So I can't use this one.
Could you? Because it's in the seam allowance?
I think this is too much of an overlap. So if you... Here, I'll cut this one out so you can see.
I'm the kind of person that would try.
Yeah, you know...
No, I must use it.
I guess I might do that too, just because I'm probably never going to finish it anyway. But it's probably not a good idea to mess with your seam allowance, right? Because you want your quilts to last. You don't want them to fall apart. So I'm trying to cut in the camera, and the camera is really zoomed in, so it's very uncomfortable. So because I marked it with my chalk pencil, it's very easy to just cut right on the line. If I wasn't also trying to cut in the window.
You should also move to the left, or that.
Oh, left? Yeah.
That works too. Because my picture was right over your hand.
Oh. So actually, I probably should have picked up bigger scissors to do this, because I can't cut the whole length with one snip with this pair. Okay, so that's how it looks once I cut it, and I'll base it in a second. But in the meantime, let's go think about if I was going to try to use this one, I would lose.
Yeah, probably the fact that it's on a corner is probably not a good idea.
I think you could, and there are some people who actually trim this end like this.
I think before you cut the one you just cut, if you had split the difference.
Yeah, maybe. It probably would be okay at that point because those overlap.
Yeah.
But I just say, like, you just have to get used to the fact that you're going to waste a bunch of fabric if you're doing fussy cutting.
Any kind of fussy cutting, you're usually wasting fabric.
Yeah, exactly. You end up with like a Swiss cheese thing. So usually when I do these, I will mark a lot of them up front and then cut them all. And because this would end up having been in a straight line, you could even cut like this and then subcut your hexagons to save time. So let's baste this fussy cut hexagon. Here's my fabric, and don't do what I did. Press your fabric before you do this. Especially if you're trying for accuracy, you should press your fabric.
That's always good advice.
Putting a dot right in the middle to hold my hexagon piece. And you can see that, or actually you probably can't see because I already glued it, but this 3/8 seam allowance is way bigger than the 3/8 that I was eyeballing. You can see how much extra fabric is over here, as opposed to my eyeballed. This is probably closer to 1/4 inch.
So when you just put that paper down, were you looking at the edges at all?
I wasn't, because I was trusting that I did a good job, but I guess I should check. Look, it's not exactly in the center.
So is
so
like
the better
from the
job
back, is there a way to know?
From the back?
Well, I guess like just the way you were doing it before, when you only had the paper and not the plastic template, you were going by what's on the side.
Right, exactly.
Do you also do that at this point?
I mean, in general, you want it in the center so that your seam allowance is the same. But since what I really care about was where that point is, what I could do is I could line up underneath the point and then slide myself up to what the seam allowance should be in order to try to be centered. And then you could flip yourself over and just with your hands fold it over to see if you're correct. And this time I'm a little bit to the right, and last time I was a little bit to the left. You can really drive yourself crazy trying to make this really perfect. So I'm just going to try to adjust a teeny bit.
Yeah,
I
would drive myself crazy.
I think you're more of a perfectionist than I am.
Yes.
I don't tend to notice if it's slightly off. So I'm just going to quickly baste this.
And I don't do EPP, so.
Well, that's not true. Didn't you start a grandmother's
I
flour
started
butter a long
one. I
time
didn't
ago?
get very far.
I think you might have gotten further than me.
I'm not sure about that.
Where is that project? I haven't seen
It's
it.
on my cutting table at home. I tried to give it to Raina, and then she gave it
Oh.
back when she moved.
If it had been yo-yos, she would have taken it. She loves yo-yos. All right. So I basted it, and you can see how much bigger this 3/8 inch seam allowance is than the one I eyeballed. And then, hooray! Look how pretty. It's not perfect. Like here,
Put it next to the other one.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. But I don't think it's that big a deal. Actually, this one's more perfect than this one, and this one I didn't use a template.
The one you eyeballed.
Yeah. But look how cool the secondary design is going to be, right? Because there's this little bit of the second one, and it's going to join right on the point.
Awesome.
This would be so cool. You can imagine, as the center when it went all the way around. Or maybe you would do a pink one.
Oh, yeah.
Or maybe you would do the julep one. It's really pretty. I think it has a lot of promise.
Yes, I agree.
And you can get like super complicated with your fussy cutting and make. I'm reaching up for one of my old ones. So this is this is very old. But I was trying to see sort of like how much fussy cutting I could do. These pieces are not fussy cut. I just cut whatever. But you can see that this is fussy cut from a print to make this diamond. All of these are fussy cut. This one isn't because it's like the negative space just for your eye to be able to rest. And then these are all fussy cut too. But it's a print that has a lot of negative space. So I picked a motif to go in the center. And then I actually thought these were hilarious, these little egg things. And I purposely put them so that they were like this. So I pointed the egg to the point of the pentagon, because this is a pentagon, right? So it does have an up and a down. It's not vertically top down symmetrical. And then when I was putting them on, I could have put them on with the point here, and then they would have all been like this. But I thought it was funnier to do one like this and one like this.
And Dana is saying that she's always wanted to try EPP and that she should just jump in and give it a try. And that's absolutely true because it's such a low commitment.
Yes.
Like you could do one flower and then you could applique it onto something else or, one little something. You don't have to do a whole quilt, and that is a good way to try it. Yeah. And see if you like it. And if not, don't do it anymore.
Yeah. So the applique idea, you see it kind of come and go in terms of popularity. Let me get another piece of fabric.
But yeah, a lot of people really love this. I mean, I know a lot of people that just do this this is almost the only quilting they do.
Yeah. Do you remember that year when we all worked at City Quilter where everyone got the EPP bug?
Well, that's when I started it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So what she was talking about with applique is instead of sewing your pieces to each other and then, the next one to the end here and then having to EPP the entire top of your quilt, you could sew together. Well, actually, let's use one of these.
Yeah, just use that one.
Sew together one flower and then applique the flower onto a background fabric. And then this block is an applique block. And then you can sew the blocks to each other and make a quilt or just have the one.
Yeah, or on a pillow or, all kinds of stuff on the back of a jacket.
Yeah. One tip I have for you for this stitching, I do not like stitching them together. But as you go outwards, take the paper out of the center. So like in this case, I had this paper and then I stitched all of these on. As soon as I'm done with this round, I can take this paper out. And then once I'm done with this round, I can take these papers out. And why you want to do that is because it makes it easier to fold as you're stitching the next layer. So like if I look at this one that I made a long time ago, actually, I think these just fell out from being folded and put back in. But you can see that I took out all the ones in the middle so that I could then do this step. And for whatever reason, I didn't take these out at the same time. I can take these in. Nope, those are there too. This was, yeah, this isn't a La Paz, but blown up. La Passacalia is one of those EPP quotes that everybody knows. Does anyone have any questions? Basic EPP stuff? Or do you want to see the fabrics again? They're so pretty. I could play with more. I wonder what this would look like. Yeah, what if this was the center?
Oh, interesting.
It's a little busy.
That's such a pretty blue.
Yeah, this is such a pretty, like, Prussian blue.
Yeah.
Which print do you think is your favorite from the bundle, Andrea?
Oh, that's a good question. Either the Echinacea or
the pink one or the blue one?
Oh,
So I put the QR code on the screen if you'd like to click through it and look at the bundle on our website. We have 11 of them available because the 12th one is this one that I cut up already. And they are limited edition. Pre-Spirit made a certain amount, and that's it. They're not going to keep making them. So this one, I do not remember the name of this colorway.
Yeah, I don't have them.
Versus
memorized.
this one.
I don't know. I think the yellow. I think that one.
Yeah. I like how on this one there is a pink background and on this one is a white background. The difference makes this so much crisper, but this is like really soft and feminine.
Yeah.
You know? And that it's just such a subtle difference in the print, having one be a white background. This probably would fussy cut better because of the white background. You get more contrast. I lost my template again.
Sandra is asking if you can show taking out the paper.
Oh, sure. Yeah, good question.
Which I was actually going to ask you also.
So
I've never gotten far enough to take the paper out of any of the ones I've done.
Right, I know. So we'll take this one, okay? Now, this is ancient. This is probably...
We had that when we opened the store in the studio on the 6th floor. So that would have been...
Robin is asking about thread color. That's a good question. Some people do like to match their thread color to the fabric. So theoretically, if you were sewing this to this, you would pick probably the lighter one to stitch to. I do not do that. I just sew with a, like a, you know, the kind of neutral that you use for piecing. I like a light gray, but you could do like a beige, and I just do the same for all of them.
A couple of people are asking about balls also, and there's a book.
What did they mean by balls?
So 3-dimensional.
Oh, 3-dimensional. I have never done
there's a book that I have. I don't remember the author's name, but it's called Puzzle Balls, and it's different patterns for making 3-dimensional balls with. Although I think she uses a sewing. Because I made some balls and I didn't do them by hand.
Oh.
But it's called Puzzle Balls. I don't know if it's still in print, but I'm sure you can find it somewhere.
Yeah. Okay, so this is very old, and also I thread basted some of these. You can see that there's still thread in some of them. So bear with me as I try to take this paper out because it might be some weirdness here.
Let's find out. Everybody thinks it's Ginny Byer, so I'll look that up while you guys are probably right.
Like I'm pulling up the glue and then I just pull the paper out. That's it. It's very tedious, that step at the end, because you feel like you're done, but then you're not actually done. You have to still pull all these papers out.
Yes, you guys are right. Ginny Byer, Puzzle Ball book. Patchwork Puzzle Balls is the name of it. And I've made a couple of them. It's pretty fun. And that one you can use your machine. You don't have to, or at least partially. You might have to sew a little bit by hand at the end. But I do as little hand sewing as I can. And I remember making some of these. So it is possible.
When you start pulling them out, you'll see that they get bent. And while you're stitching, they'll get bent too. You can still reuse these. You could iron them on pretty hot, make sure there's no glue left on them or glue gets on your iron. But you can iron them to make them flat again, and you can reuse them. I have some that you can tell I've reused over and over again. I would guess that you get at least 2 to 5 reuses of them, depending on how rough you're going to be with it. This has glue on it. Well, only on one side, so I'm guessing this was only used once. But some of my other ones are really beaten up, and they actually hold pretty well.
And it is possible to make your own papers, but it's really hard to make them accurate.
Do not do that. You're just driving yourself crazy.
Yeah, it's worth just paying for them
Yeah,
to
unless you have one of those
with a big machine so that they're all exactly the same.
If you have one of those Cricut things,
yeah,
then oh, I forgot I turned my camera off because I
yeah, that's the way to do it. If you have a mechanical or a electronic computerized cutter, that would work too.
Yeah, so for those of you who have Cricuts at home, theoretically you could put a design into your Cricut software and then have it printed. But if you try to cut it yourself, like the weight of these papers is just slightly lighter than index cards.
Mm-hmm.
And if you try to cut it yourself by like making a line and cutting, you are not going to be accurate enough. And when you go to piece them together, those tiny differences, like the first round is not that bad. The second round maybe isn't that bad. But then by the sixth round, you have a disaster and you're just going to be so frustrated.
Yeah, it's not worth it. You think you're saving money and time, but you're not.
Yeah, maybe you're saving only money, but not time.
Right.
And like, how much is your time worth, right?
Exactly.
Yep. All right, so that's about it for us today. I'm sorry about my tooth. I have to practice putting the tooth in.
Everybody's got tooth issues. It's not just you.
I'm having an implant put in. So
I know at least 3 people that are in the process of getting implants done right now. So
do you? Maybe that's like our age. People our age start getting implants. Oh, Kathy's saying AccuQuilt has a whole set of dies to cut the papers and the fabrics. That makes sense.
There you go.
If you're using a die. Yep. So if you have an AccuQuilt system already, it's a good idea. All right. Did I forget anything, Andrea?
Not that I know of. I don't think so.
Okay. So thanks for joining us tonight. We will be back on Tuesday next week. Reminder that we are going to QuiltCon in 2 weeks. So that means that we will not have a live on the 19th, I think it is. Or is it the 20th?
I think it's 2 weeks. I don't know.
Yeah, it's in 2 weeks. So I think it's the.
I could look at my calendar.
Why are dates so difficult?
Numbers. It's the 20th.
Yeah, so we won't be live on Tuesday the 20th because we will be in cars driving down to North Carolina, where we will see some of you guys. We cannot wait. We are making so much inventory, you have no idea.
Yes. Wearing out our cutting mats and our rotary cutters over here.
In our hands.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for joining us. We will see you next week. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.